Okay, it's 10:32. My name is Satish Ramade. I am co-chair Programs Committee, Washtenaw County Democratic Party, along with Eli Nathan, who is also co-chair of our program committee. It's 9:32. We will get started. As you can see on the screen, we have a full agenda. As per our agenda, the first section is the virtual candidate corner. We have Tom Kelly from presidential candidate of Biden and Harris, presidential candidate. Tom, if you are in the attendee list, please raise your hand. Okay, so maybe we can come back. We have a Gretchen Driskell campaign representative as well, Jacob Armando.
Actually, it's Gretchen.
Oh, hi, Gretchen.
I know Jacob I'm not sure why he put me in as under his name, and I haven't quite figured out how to undo that because I just got on, so my apologies.
If you like, I can change it to your name.
Yes, please. Gretchen
Okay.
Driskell, that would be great.
I can do that. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a quick opportunity to say hello to all my friends in the Washtenaw County Democratic Party. Thank you so much for all the great work you're doing. I'm sorry that I'm not able to attend more meetings. As you all know, it's a big district, and the only good thing about this COVID is being virtual and getting around 7 counties in 20 minutes. So I'm going to be down in Lenawee and Jackson today, and physically, but anyhow, I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you're doing to turn out the vote in Washtenaw County. Fundamentally, Washtenaw County is hugely important to the 7th Congressional District. For those of you that don't know, the 7th Congressional District consists of 7 counties. If you put your little Michigan state hand up here, it's Monroe County, Lenawee County, Hillsdale County, Branch County, Jackson County going north, and Eaton County, which is on the west side of Lansing. So it's a really big district, and it's a lot of territory to cover, and a lot of folks to meet. And I've had the good fortune to get to know a lot of folks in Washtenaw County in my time as mayor and also as a state rep and just as a community volunteer. So, we're running to make sure that we do the right things for all the people in the 7th Congressional District and work hard to change the direction of our country. And I'm confident that we can win when we get the turnout that we expect to see. And I know there's a lot of folks here on this call that are working really, really hard to make sure that we have that turnout. So I just wanted to really check in and say thank you for all the work you've been doing since the last election, because I know you really haven't stopped. If anything, you're growing and doing more. I've been working really hard on getting the voter's guide out to the rest of the district via different mechanisms. Via some of the county parties are participating and some aren't. So it's been a bit frustrating, but I'm really excited about having that tool again. And your continued leadership on that issue is really important. We are actually going to mail it to our precincts that are have the lowest turnout and have the most opportunity to improve the record turnout. But fundamentally, I would just say, as I talk to people around the country and explain this race, and this is my 3rd time running. We were a top tier race in the last 2 cycles. We still are very competitive. And what we plan on doing here in the Michigan 7th is taking those 10,700 odd votes Trump won by last time and getting them back for Joe Biden and making sure that Joe Biden and Gary Peters also win out of Michigan. So I didn't know if anybody had any quick questions, but I know you have a long agenda and a lot of folks you wanted to hear from. So I didn't know if you had any questions in particular for me about what's happening on the campaign, but I would just urge you to make sure that we get out the vote here in Western and Southern Washtenaw County. It's the district. It will significantly impact it. It's a big part of our win number. Also, Eaton County is really important. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions. So I just wanted to check in and say thank you.
Thank you so much, Gretchen.
Thank you, Gretchen.
We usually candidate corner format. Usually we don't have a Q&A kind of format, but since we have time, we have some time for questions. So if anybody have any question, please use the chat functionality. Okay, so with that
Okay.
said, the next is we have Precinct Organizing Committee, the wonderful Janet Cannon and the great work POC is doing. So Janet, go ahead, and you said you need to share, so I'm gonna stop sharing, and you should be able to share it.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. Let's see, share. Here we go. It says host disabled. Attendee screen sharing. It should be on the right link for panelist screen sharing. No, let's see. Should,
Okay, try now, Janet.
okay. Here we are. I think this is going to be the right one. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Board. All right.
Great.
So what I didn't think of it is that my spiel is on a different tab. So I'll just flip back and forth and remind myself. Okay, so all right, so we have over 1,000 people signed up as volunteers. Many of them, we're calling them all precinct organizers this year. That includes our precinct delegates. And that also includes the people who just have signed up to do 1 or 2 turfs, but they're still now going to be in contact with us for all the other things that we are going to come up with them to do. So since we got started, we have had very minimum 107,000 voter contacts, because that does not count everything that went either through Wave or through people's individual accounts with the materials we've used. But this is just a rough idea. The door-to-door represents those door hangers that we put out with how to vote absentee and how to find your clerk. Okay. So we are hoping that more people will sign up. See, even with 1,000 people roughly out in the field, there are still areas that are uncovered. Ypsilanti Township really needs extra help. We can still take people, and this is where you would sign up. You'll find it on the website or on our Facebook page. Okay. Here is a little insight. Here they came in. The area captains. So that's what's unique about our structure this year is that Ed Sanders, Sandy Levitsky, and Liz Schaefer have put together a structure like the NP had for the Prop 2. And so we have 15, well, no, we have more than 15 because some of them are co-captains, including Loretta, who's here today. And they come and get the guides and separate them into the appropriate amounts, and then they spread them out to their precinct organizers. There they go. Okay, let me just check back at my notes. Okay, yeah, so the other unique thing that our team came up with, which is just amazing, is they now have what they call a virtual campaign office. So when somebody's finished up their turfs, they need to get more turfs, and their area captain might be at work or otherwise engaged or out themselves. And we have people staffing a virtual campaign office, which you can connect with through your area captain. So you can get new turfs as quickly as possible. Some of the areas in Washtenaw have so many people that they can really only get 1 or 2 turfs close to home. But we are hoping that they will all then pivot to go out to the areas where we weren't able to get as many volunteers. And the virtual campaign office will help that happen. Okay. We have done a lot of other stuff besides just the regular structure. As I'm saying, this year's effort has had a lot of challenges, not being able to go out in person. We've had a huge recruiting effort, which was Erica Terry with that amazing Orion volunteer management system that she designed for us in the area captains. We've also seen that there's still a lot of confusion among voters about all the new rules. So adopting absentee voting, there's a lot of steps and it's not always clear. It's amazing the questions we get every day. So with Teresa Reed, we've put a lot of thought into developing messaging, and that's what these are here. If you look on our election resources page, on the first page of the website, you'll see a big banner, and you just click on that and you will get to this page. where you can have the virtual version of the voter guide. Well, it's for the moment, it's still a PDF, but we actually have another wonderful volunteer, Charles Roth, that Ed found us, who is within a day or two should have up a proper digital version with links and everything that will work on telephones, because the one we have is not that great on a telephone. And now we're saying, why didn't we think of that a little sooner? But you know, there's been a lot of moving parts. So these are some of the different infographics that you would find on that election resource page. You have to look for the links. We did a lot of work at the farmers market with Karen, putting out a call for people to be poll workers. And as it happens, this actually happens every time, but even with an increased number of poll workers that they're hiring, Washtenaw County no longer needs any Democratic poll workers. If you know of Republicans who are willing to come in, then they might be able to hire a few more Democrats, but they have to have parity. So it's a little tricky. However, you can also go to other counties. I signed up to go to Detroit, actually. So another big thing that we did was create a resource for all the drop boxes and clerk's offices in the county. So at this link, you will find an interactive PDF that shows you who's your clerk, what's their hours are. There's a picture of the drop box and very complete information. Here's Dexter. Now, a lot of the tricky things, you know, you do a lot of this sort of behind the scenes work, but getting it out so that people know about it and are able to use it is not that easy. We do it through the newsletter and through Facebook, but it would really help if everybody listening takes the time to, if you can stay on Facebook, go visit and like our page and start sharing those posts, because that's how the information circulates a lot these days. And you can also send it directly to people that you know, through your mailing list. Another big thing that we did just recently in the voter guide, the printed voter guide for lack of resources, we only do a listing of our endorsed candidates and the people on our Democratic candidates once you get down to a lot of the local races. And we've just created 3 pages of local election resources where we put in all of everyone who gave us pictures and statements. So on the website, you can also go to that. That's what it looks like here. And these links here are interactive, so you can go straight to the areas you're looking at, you're interested in. There's 3 pages like that. Anything else? Okay, Dropbox. So yeah, we worked very closely this year with Adam Zemke and Jennifer Fairfield to try and help coordinate the production so that we get the timing right. There's always things that come up. There was another printer hitch, so it's been a little bit later than we wanted, but we've made a lot of progress on that. And as I'm saying here, with the mobile friendly one will be up really soon. And just so you know, as Gretchen mentioned, putting out the voter guide in the 7th district, we've actually made 3, they have actually, that was not our part, we were just following this process, but based on the basic bones of our voter guide, Brian Greminger and other people put together versions for the 12th district Dems, which is the Wayne County part, and then the 7 counties of Lenawee, of the 7th district. Oh, I'm tired, okay. All right, so I mentioned that about getting the information out. Greg Hafer is our communications chair. He's been like super helpful, hours of work to help to make this all happen for the local input, local candidates as well. So we said that, and we're just so grateful for our fundraising people, Doug Scott and Jeff McGrew, and also Karen Costumo, who has brought in an amazing amount at the farmer's market with the signs and buttons and everything. So stickers, all of that stuff. It's done really, really well. So we're really, really grateful that we were able to fund all of this. So what do we do next? Once the guides are out, We still have lots of people who want to do lots of things. Everybody wants to make sure this works this year, that we would have a sane and decent government that works on safety and well-being of people. So we're still not going to do ourselves a traditional knock on doors GTV, but we are doing phone banks and text banks and more wave emails to help people be sure that those ballots get in. We do have, I forgot to write it down, but we have the ride to the polls. We're not actually organizing it in the same way this year, but we are connecting people to volunteers who are willing to give rides. We don't expect there will be a lot of those, and they will be this year spread out. It won't be all a big flurry on election day. So we're not recruiting tons of people to do it. We don't expect a huge demand, but we do have people available who will do it as needed. And of course, poll greeting is going to be the next big push. Jane Foreman has it all set up to run shifts at most of the polling stations, and we've got the poll greeter card all ready to go. And we've just heard that the Biden campaign, which is, for those who aren't familiar, also the Michigan Dems One campaign, and they are going to distance door knocking. So for volunteers who are up for that, that's a very good option. Many people will not want to do that. So we have the phone banking, call greeting for people who want like limited exposure, but still to be out there. There is an election protection program that we can connect people to. And we are also looking for other things, what else we might want to do. So any thoughts or questions are welcome. So you should probably unshare there.
Thank you, Janet. The next section is the chair's report. However, I was wondering if Tom Kelly from the presidential campaign is available one last time.
Don't see him.
Raise your hand if you're on the attendee side. It doesn't look like it. So go ahead, Chris. This is all yours. Chair's report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Satish. I think most of what is really happening that's exciting right now in the Washtenaw Dems, Janet really summed up pretty well. I just want to, say how proud I am to be working with such an incredibly talented and passionate and dynamic group of people who are just taking our precinct delegate or our precinct organizing program to a level that, we really only dreamed about even 4 to 6 years ago. I do want to point out to folks that we are going to, at our next meeting in November, which is on November 8th, I believe, maybe 7th, the first Saturday in November. I'm going to look, yes, November 7th. The meeting is largely going to be to consider a new bylaws update. It's a fairly substantial update because we are looking at, Greg Hafer has put together a proposal to reduce the number of people on the executive board from nearly 30 to just under 20 to make it more manageable and to have slightly less flat management structure in terms of how we distribute, the tasks that need to be done. So that information has been sent out by email. Greg put together about a 30-minute explainer video on it that it talks about all the different changes that were made. If you want to participate in that, you're going to need to be a member of the Michigan Democratic Party 30 days in advance. So you have until October 8th to do that if you are not already a member. If you are not sure if you are a member, you can contact us by sending an email to info@washtenawdems.org, and we will check your registration or your MDP membership for you. But this is an effort to make us a more efficient organization that distributes the workload a little bit more efficiently. So I hope you participate in that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, we have on the agenda, we have Congresswoman Dingell next, but I'm going to have Yousef Rabhi go first because he's got to travel today, so he needs to be on and off the phone fairly quickly. So with that, if we could promote, I don't know, Yousef's already there. So Yousef, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for coming out today. So I am going to be traveling a little bit today because I'm out doing doors. I've been knocking doors now for the last several months for our Take Back the House efforts across the state. We obviously have a great opportunity here in Michigan to reclaim the House of Representatives. And, you know, it's been an honor to be part of that work. But I just wanted to give a quick update on some of the things going on in Lansing. Right now, obviously, is a very, very interesting time in our country, but in our state in particular right now, with the recent court decision that was made over Governor Whitmer's executive order. So that has thrown a lot of things into chaos in Lansing. But I just wanted to give a brief update on that. So where we believe things are at as of now is, you know, the court order that went into effect that sort of nullified a lot of Governor Whitmer's executive orders. That does not take effect for another 21 days. So there is a little bit of a window in which the legislature can act in order to codify some of the things that were in the executive orders into law. It remains to be seen whether or not the legislature is actually going to convene. We have not gotten word yet over whether or not that is going to be happening. So I know that there are some parts of the executive orders that the Republicans may see as things that they would like to put into effect, such as, you know, allowing local governments to meet virtually. But I think there's also some things that I doubt that they would ever put up for a vote, including some of the mask ordinance stuff, because obviously their rank and file voters don't support that kind of thing. And so the fact that they're even questioning whether or not to come back to session to put in place some of these, you know, baseline safety protocols should be, for everybody on this call, a reminder of why we need to take the majority back in November, because Democrats believe in science. Democrats believe in public health. We believe in the safety of all citizens, and Republicans are willing to play political games with people's lives, even when the president of the United States is, you know, in a hospital for COVID. So it remains to be seen whether they will actually come together or not. But the fact that they're even questioning it is very troubling. So we need to act as soon as possible, because if we don't act in 21 days, we believe that the governor's orders will be nullified by the court decision, unless there's further court action. Now, of course, as we all know, the pandemic is also heightening, and so this is not a good time for this court to have made this decision. So we need action from the legislature. This was also a very busy past week, and I do have a couple of good news things that I wanted to highlight. The first one is that we did pass a budget. We did pass a balanced budget for the upcoming fiscal year. It wasn't perfect, but it was a compromised budget, and I think we got a lot less pain than we all thought we would have in this budget process. The second thing I wanted to highlight, which is a real positive, is the passage of our expungement bills. So I had a bill in this package. It was a 7-bill criminal justice reform package that puts Michigan as a leader in the country in terms of expungement. So this bill package essentially creates a process by which criminal records can be expunged for people who have misdemeanors and felonies on their records. It increases the number of felonies and misdemeanors that you can have. It creates an automatic expungement process so that people don't have to actually hire an attorney, go to court, spend all that money and resources to try to get their record expunged. It actually happens in an automatic way once you're eligible. So this is an incredible bill package that will actually put Michigan as one of the first states in the country to have something like this. And this was monumental, and it actually passed the House, went to the Senate. Senate made some changes, and then we actually approved it in the House on Thursday and sent it to the governor's desk. So we believe she will sign it, and we believe that this will become law in Michigan. And by the way, it includes some marijuana offenses that will now be expungible, some driving offenses as well. So this is a really good bill package. Then there was also some really bad stuff that was passed, including a bill that grants blanket immunity to corporations in Michigan during the pandemic This was something that was opposed by our labor community because, for example, for nurses, they don't want hospitals to be immune from liability if they're not providing proper PPE to their nurses. And so Democrats, by and large, opposed this. It's still unfortunately passed, but that's a taste of the kind of legislation that is just, why are we passing legislation that gives corporations liability during a pandemic? That's the kind of stuff that we see coming out of this legislature. And as we prepare for lame duck, I want you all to know that, we need to be vigilant, because there is going to be, even though we have a Democratic governor, we need to be real vigilant to make sure that they don't try to sneak a bunch of bad stuff through. We need to be active, ready to go, building up to the election, but then even after that too. Like we can't rest. Stay tuned for that. And obviously I want to just end by thanking all of you for the work that you've done this campaign cycle already in Washtenaw County, and those of you that have helped, donated, or participated in phone banks for our Take Back the House effort. Other than the top of the ticket items, this is the most important, statewide thing that we could be doing right now. There's a lot of important local races in Washtenaw too, but statewide, this is the game. The governor's not up, the Senate's not up, the House is what's up, and we need to take that back. We need 4 seats to win a majority. We can get it. We have 4 seats that we're looking at that we feel really good about. If you'd like to help, shoot me a text. This is a critical moment for our country and our state. So thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you to Chris for all your fantastic work as chair, and I will turn it back over to you.
Yousef, thanks so much. Congratulations on your legislation. That's really exciting, and it's going to be a good move for everybody. With that, I'm going to turn it over now to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. You will need to unmute yourself. And you have.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm out, so therefore I'm wearing my mask. Sorry, but I always have the blue behind me. I'm back from Washington, which I have to say that I think this last week has been the most surreal week I have lived through. We are continuing to push to get another COVID package through. The House passed a package on Thursday that would address many of the issues that everybody cares about, from expanding unemployment to expanding testing, putting more in tracing, to putting money into mortgage, and to help give people mortgage relief, rental relief, keep people from being evicted, more money into PPP, money to still try to protect the election process, money to protect the airlines, money to protect independent restaurants, money for state and local governments, which are desperate for more money. Nancy, yesterday, before I left, she is continuing discussions with Mnuchin safely. He's now wearing a mask. And both of them have tested negative. They're hopeful that they may reach agreement over the weekend. I guess I'm going to comment on this in a minute. I'll do the other one. And we are on standby to return next Wednesday or Thursday. So that is, I think, the most important thing that we are working on right now, because so many people do need relief. The debate this week, I think, was a disgrace for democracy, but I do believe that Joe Biden showed the leader that he would be, and I think what it means for steady leadership. Unfortunately, the president may have put a lot of people at risk. I wish both he and the First Lady speedy recovery, but I'm going to tell you point blank, people are suddenly getting very visually what community spread means. A third senator has tested positive this morning. So there are 3 Republican senators that were in the Rose Garden a week ago today on the Supreme Court issue. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Many of the inner circle have tested positive, and none of us are quite sure what it all means. But I hope the most important thing is that everybody understands, as the director of the CDC says, even though the president tries to undercut him, and I'm really trying not to be political right now, it's hard. And I do want him to get better. But Dr. Redfield says wearing a mask, keeping your physical distance, and washing your hands is as effective as a vaccine. And suddenly you are seeing official Washington. You should have seen what it was like yesterday morning. The threat started early. All my colleagues that had been at the debate were immediately called to the doctor's office. They were put in quarantine until they got negative tests back. And then all of us have been in there. You know, president doesn't like me, so I don't have to worry about being invited to anything with him. But, you know, I was in probably 20 meetings with Nancy, who had been with Mnuchin. I saw Mark Meadows, and I was with my colleagues all week. So this is what community spread is. You've got half of official Washington that doesn't wear masks, and it's waking up the country. So this is going to be a very, I don't know what it means for the election. I'm going to say that, but I'm also going to say right now, I care about my communities. I care about where I live, and we must reinforce with everybody that we do know how to stay safe. And that's doing the way Joe Biden does it. He wears his masks. He goes to smaller events, which everybody's bitched about, but he's trying to do it safely. He is trying to listen to the scientists and the doctors, and that's what we've got to do. We're a month out. I still can't believe RBG's gone. Bruce, Vader Ginsburg. It really was very difficult last week. Each week, you know, you think what else can happen, and I don't think any of us can wait to say goodbye to 2020. And now people are beginning to wonder, with 3 Republican senators being positive, what does that mean? You know, we're just taking each day as it comes right now. But we can't give up. We got to keep our sleeves rolled up. The voter guide is going out. It's starting to be delivered in the various forms that it's going to be in Washtenaw. Wayne's going to do it the following 3 weeks. That's going to happen. I do need to tell you this. I don't have the details. Bernie Sanders will be in Ann Arbor on Monday. Well, not Ann Arbor, take that, Chris. I shouldn't have used that word. Chris and I've had a lot of discussions in the last 12 hours. We're figuring it out where it's going to be. Bernie is more cautious than Joe Biden. So we need to energize people. We need to turn out people, but we got to figure out a safe place to do it and physically spaced. And we are not going to be building the crowds of thousands that we have done before. But I don't want everybody to yell at me and say, why didn't you tell me either? So actually I got a call about where it may be while I was talking to you all. So, and we just have to work our hearts and souls out. We are doing a lot of stuff in Washington. I mean, you know, we need to think about what's really happening. Obviously, the president getting COVID is distracting the country, but reminding the country about leadership on COVID as well. But at the same time, yesterday we passed 2 resolutions in the House. One, I mean, we live in a country that is actually doing hysterectomies on women that are in detainment camps. That is what they did in Hitler did in Nazi Germany. We have to be paying attention to what's happening. We cannot let our hearts get cold. We need to listen to QAnon and the conspiracy theories. And we're actually going to have people coming to Congress that spew this hatred. So we got to make sure that we turn out. We got to win the state house back. Yousef is right. I don't take Michigan for granted for Trump. I felt nervous last weekend. I'm hoping that the debate and other things are going to make it okay. But I want to also say to you all, Gary Peters needs us. Gary Peters needs us to turn out every vote there is. This is going to be a tight race. The eyes of the country are on Michigan. We didn't do so well 4 years ago when their eyes were on us. Let's show them that we got the message and can kick butt. And the 12th job is to turn out every single vote that we can. And Washtenaw is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. So thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, we've had at least a week's worth of news in the last 2 days, I think. A year's worth of news in the last week. So, and we've got a lot to chew on, and we've got a lot of responsibility, and we take it very seriously here. I'm going to go to Larry Kestenbaum. I see that Tom Kelly's here, so after Larry's done, Tom will bring you up. So, Larry, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Good morning. I'm Larry Kestenbaum, County Clerk, and I am very grateful for your all support in the recent primary. I was very gratified by the vote that I got, and thank you so much for letting me continue in this position for another 4 years. I have a lot to say. I'll try to say it quickly. One of the things that has been coming up increasingly, I've gotten a lot of people contacting me, contacting my office about it. You know, they're concerned about the possibility that the president is going to see the in-person vote and then declare victory before the absentees can be counted. That is not happening in Michigan because the absentees are counted contemporaneously with the in-person votes. In the primary, we had all of the absentee ballots for every part of the county, all it reported by 1:10 a.m. And in fact, we weren't even done with all the in-person precincts by that time. So I expect, you know, especially with, and again, I appreciate the efforts in the legislature. They passed a bill, you know, through the Senate, and I think it's going through the House to give another day, the day before the election. We can local clerks can start working on the absentees, which is going to be, you know, that is critical to have that extra time. And so I don't anticipate that in most areas there'll be any delay in getting the absentee ballots reported. So there won't be any opportunity, there won't be any gap for someone to say, aha, Trump is ahead, so let's declare victory. That's not going to happen. The absentees, all the absentees that are in by election day are going to be counted on election night in Washtenaw County. I'm very confident of that. Not just in Washtenaw County, but in almost every county. Now there's also been a court ruling that ballots that arrive in the 2 weeks after the election that are postmarked before the election, that those should also be counted. You know, we've been working with the Bureau of Elections in Lansing on the process for that, and that is not going to hold up the reporting of any results. What's going to happen is that the late ballots are going to be processed in a somewhat separate process. The counting boards will convene periodically during the following 2 weeks, you know, to handle those ballots. In many areas, it's going to be done at the county level instead of the local level. The number of late ballots, I think, is numerically not going to be large. It's going to be only a very small percentage. I think that we're going to have, you know, based on just the votes that can come in by election day and are processed on election day, I think that we'll have a complete. I think we'll have a victory at all levels, is my prediction. But there'll be a small additional increment of votes that come in in the days after. Again, in the primary we had about 500 or 600 ballots that came in late in the primary in Washtenaw County, out of, you know, the 100,000, some 111,000 votes all told. So so I don't expect that the late ballots are going to be any kind of game changer. The ballots are, but anyway, we have that opportunity to process those late ballots. Another thing that I wanted to caution you about is that it is not legal to collect ballots and deposit them, as much as that might be convenient for people to be able to hand the ballots off to someone to take them to the city hall or township hall. Under Michigan law, Michigan election law, it's required that the only people who can handle the ballot once it's been voted are the you know, the voter's immediate family, you know, or the postal service, or, you know, other delivery services. So as much as it's tempting to say, let's collect everybody's ballots and bring them to the drop box, you know, they've got to either do that themselves or find a way to do it with their family. What I suggested was someone was inquiring this to me, and that was you could give people a ride to the drop box. Maybe, you know, do it the same way that Uber does, with a completely, you know, all the PPE in the car and so forth, and masks. You can take people to the drop box to have them drop it off if that's, but they can't give you the ballot to drop it off if you're not in their family. I think that's about it, and I'm open for any questions. If you have questions, post them in the chat, and I will. And if I have an opportunity to speak again, I will address those. Thanks.
Larry, thank you very much. And I know that our precinct organizing committee team is just super grateful for how open you've been to a barrage of questions to clarify things for us and to keep things, keep us informed about what's happening and the changes that are happening. So really do appreciate all you're doing. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Tom Kelly to give us an update from the Biden campaign.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Congresswoman Dingell, for everything you're doing for the campaign. It's always great to hear about what's happening in Washington to address a lot of these issues that are affecting us, in every household. So just to give you a sort of a top-line update of what we're doing with the Biden campaign, there are a lot of moving parts right now. We're a month out, and I'm sure many in this call have recognized the pickup in speed of principal visits. We're actually going to be starting in-person canvassing soon. So things that, people recognize as sort of staples on, normal campaigns in a normal year are starting to happen and will be happening through the next 30 days. So we actually had Vice President Biden in Michigan yesterday in Grand Rapids, where he gave a very moving speech talking about COVID and the pandemic, in addition to the economy. We're hoping to get him back a few more times before now on Election Day. We had Senator Harris in Michigan last week. We had her in Flint and Detroit, in addition to Oakland County. And then Dr. Jill Biden has made a number of stops in the state over the past couple of weeks in Grand Rapids and then Traverse City on Tuesday. So we're starting to get people in state, we're, trying to do as much sort of, as many touches as we can, get as much earned media as we can. As the Congresswoman, pointed out, it's hard because, we're trying to be very safe. Safety is the number one priority for this campaign as it relates to rallies or visits, events, in addition to canvassing. So, I understand fully, it'd be great to have a big, fire 'em up rally with Joe with, 2,500 people there, but unfortunately that's just not the world we live in right now. So we're doing small events, we're trying to get media, we're trying just to kind of plant our flag to show that Joe Biden and the Biden campaign cares about Michigan and that we're in play and that we want to do everything we can safely and legally here in Michigan. Of course, as folks know, we also have to comply with the governor's orders as well. And that's a factor in deciding how big these events are too. So that's a big part of what's going on right now. This last week has been sort of very unique for the campaign, with the debates and all the fallout from that. And then the news yesterday for the president and his wife testing positive, in addition to a number of people in their circle. So, we're trying to sort of be nimble and message on the fly. This is a very unpredictable campaign. It's been an unpredictable election year. And we appreciate everything the folks in this call are doing, and we appreciate your flexibility and understanding. It's hard oftentimes, operating in a pandemic, because people are used to sort of campaigning a certain way. I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing to be sort of creative and helping us, in the grounds. You're going to keep seeing virtual events moving forward. Every week we're doing something sort of, a couple of calls every week on the constituency front. We are having Senator Sanders physically here next week in Washtenaw County. So that should be a great event. We're still deciding on venue. We're trying to be creative and find a place that's going to be most impactful and obviously have the ability to invite the most amount of people under the governor's orders. So that's going to be great. That's on Monday. We're expecting other surrogates to come through in the next week or two as well. Those are yet to be locked down. But anyways, you're starting to see a lot more happening. As it relates to the canvassing front, obviously the news the past couple of days impacted everything in this campaign, but we're still planning to move forward with in-person canvassing at a socially distant, respectful pace. And right now we're starting in targeted precincts, hoping to sort of like test that out and then expand from there, depending on how successful we are of doing those canvassing safely. There are lit drops that'll take place as well. So sort of the door hanger lit drops, which a little bit different than sort of in-person canvassing, but those will pick up in earnest in the next couple of weeks. We have 80,000 yard signs in the state that have come in over the past few weeks. There's going to be a consistent clip of those coming in over the next 30 days as well. We just got a shipment of I voted yard signs that we'll be getting out to a lot of the districts over the next week or so, which would be great. So folks that have early voted, which leads me to sort of our priorities right now on the fielding organizing front. Our one campaign is still cranking out the calls and the text. The big focus is obviously on making sure people got their ballot, understand how to fill it out, and get it in time. We are recommending that folks send their ballot in by October 20th. And if you miss that deadline, to go in person to drop it off at the clerk's box that are spread around the counties. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, thank you for everything you guys are doing. We would be nowhere without our activists on the ground, and especially in Washtenaw County, which is about as blue as they come, and where our strength is. So we have to really play up our strength for this election. And we're confident, but as the Congresswoman pointed out, you can't be too confident. You have to always run like you're 20 points down. And so that's how we're approaching this, and hopefully that strategy pays off. I'll make one last point too. You're probably getting inundated by Biden ads on TV. That is a big focus of this campaign. Considering the fact that we can't have the personal touches we would like to, the campaign is spending a significant chunk in Michigan to make sure our message is getting heard far and wide. We're hitting every media mark in the state, from Marquette to Detroit, and so no county, township, city is being forgotten there. I think that that's had a very effective impact on our ability to go after the persuasion universe, especially in some of these swing counties and cities. So with that, happy to answer a question or two. If not, I'll turn it back over to Chris.
All right, thank you so much. So I think Chris had to leave. Let me real quick share for those who joined, just a quick agenda. So what we're looking at. Larry, we do have a couple questions from the audience, from the attendees. Let me get to that. So
yes.
Yeah, so one question, and let me kind of scroll to the question. Okay, so Larry, one of the questions we have is, can you make clear on Clerk's website that people need to take their absentee ballot with them to the polls if they decided to vote in person? So for example, somebody wants to vote in person, even though they have an absentee ballot, they can take it to the poll, that absentee ballot, correct? Can you speak to that, and can we make that a little bit clear on the website?
Yeah, we'll see about that. We're also planning on putting out a press release on Monday covering some of those issues. Again, I would stress that it's not necessary to vote in person in order to have your vote counted and reported on election night. So, but if you do choose to vote in person, then when you go to the polls, if you've gotten your absentee ballot, you have to surrender your absentee ballot. If you don't have it, you can fill out an affidavit of that you have lost your ballot or you've never received it. And obviously it's better if you have the ballot with you to be able to just surrender it. That's simpler. They're not going to, they can't just take your ballot and put it in the ballot in the tabulator. You've got to get a fresh ballot. Like I said, that's not at all necessary to vote in person. But if you choose to do that, that's the way you would do it. And we will make that clear in the press release and on the website. I don't know about the Liberty Post Office. I will check into that. The other thing that I should say is that we've gotten something like 130,000 absentee ballots issued already. The ballots are printed, the ballots are out, people are voting on them. Ballots, last I saw, about 12,000 or so ballots have already been returned to their local clerks and recorded as returned. as to poll workers, a number of our jurisdictions in Washtenaw County do have enough poll workers now to count all the ballots. Some of them still need people. As I think was mentioned, what they really need are Republicans, because it's a bipartisan process, and every sensitive task is supposed to be done by 2 poll workers of different parties. But even if your local jurisdictions here might have enough Democrats, there's other places in the state, other places around in the area that you could go to Lenawee County or go to Livingston County, where they might need Democrats. Detroit is always desperately in need of poll workers. My understanding is that in order to prevent the kinds of problems that Detroit has had in the past, in the recent past, that the state has made a major effort to help out Detroit, to assist them with the resources that they need, to make sure that they have enough poll workers. That's been a problem in the past, and so I'm hopeful that that issues in Detroit are going to be resolved, and so that Detroit, like the rest of the state, will have its results reported on election night and not later. I'm seeing another question here. Again, we're not expecting the election to be chaotic, but we are always in touch with the sheriff's department and local police and so on, being clear on what might be necessary to provide security for polling places and provide keeping the peace at polling places. I mean, basically the line of, the precinct chair in each polling place is responsible for keeping the peace in the polling place, and and their first call will be to the city or township clerk, and then after that to the to law enforcement or to my office. We've been doing elections in this in this county and in this country for a long time, and we have a process. Everything is follows a certain process. We had something like 100,000, close to 100,000 absentee ballots in the primary, by far the most absentee ballots we've ever had. The expectation is that we'll have twice as many as we did in the primary in the general election. And I think that we will be able to handle it, that all the the 26 cities and townships will be able to handle it. Ann Arbor and I believe Ypsilanti Township will have high-speed tabulators to be able to move ballots through at the absentee counting board. So there's not going to be any reason for things to get delayed. Processing absentee ballots is a labor-intensive process. It's but I'm confident that we will have enough people to handle all the different steps that are involved. So so I don't see any. I mean, there except in terms of outside forces creating chaos. I think that the election itself is going to be conducted in an orderly way, and we have a lot of experience with that. All of the local clerks have a lot of experience with it. So I am quite confident about the conduct of the election, at least in Michigan. The aftermath of the election, that's going to be a different story. We'll see what happens.
We have about 10 minutes left for the next segment. I think we have one other question. I think one of the question was more in line with are there any measures taken so that people are not turned away at the polling station or something of that?
Yeah, I think that there's some concern about poll workers. I mean, I'm sorry, challengers, like for example, Republican challengers standing around the drop boxes or around the clerk's offices to try to challenge people, and as well as typically Democratic challengers standing there to make sure that no one gets turned away. I think that this is a contentious process. We are actually the whole state is getting, essentially they're re-emphasizing what are the limits of what a challenger can do in a polling place on election day and before, and making sure that those things are adhered to, and that and that there aren't, for example, challengers attempting to intimidate voters. That's illegal, and that behavior can be controlled. So I am again here. I'm hopeful that will be under control. I'm sorry to hear that there have been issues, but I don't think that our voters are getting turned away by the challengers, at least as of yet. So, but like I said, we are alert to the possibility that that challengers could try to be a problem. Now, I have said in the past, you've probably all heard me say this, that that the Republicans could easily do a lot of voter suppression, a lot of lengthening of lines and polling places by simply having someone there who is disruptive and who can slow everything down and lengthen the line. And the reason why they don't do that is that they just don't have enough people with the right kind of personality to go in there where everyone in the room, including all the other Republicans, are hating them and so on. I think that I was apprehensive when I saw the debate of basically you see Trump attempting to recruit people like that who are willing to be jerks in public, but again, a lot of the things that they potentially could do to be disruptive are not legal, that those things can be responded to, that the local clerk and the county clerk and law enforcement can be of assistance in keeping that behavior under control. Plus, the large majority of the votes in most of the state are going to be coming by absentee ballots, and those are not subject to the same kind of intimidation and long lines that in-person voting is subject to. So I don't think that we're going to have long lines on election day. Even if we have a substantial turnout on election day, it's not going to be. I don't expect that anyone is going to be dissuaded by the amount of time waiting. It won't be a long time. And the federal the standard that has been established is no one should have to wait for more than half an hour. I don't think that we were there yet pre-pandemic, but that's the goal, is that in an in-person election, no one should wait more than half an hour.
Well, thank you so much, Larry. We really appreciate all the work you have been doing, and thank you for answering all the questions and help even offline as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Loretta and for our main segment of the meeting. But before that, just one quick announcement. Michigan One campaign and the Washtenaw County Democratic Party, we have one more office in Ann Arbor, along with Ypsilanti, Michigan Avenue office. So this office is on 4th Street in Ann Arbor, and we're looking for volunteers. So if you are interested in helping with that office, please reach out to us, reach out to any of us from WashtenawnCountyDems.org, and we'll be able to connect you. With that said, Loretta Corrington, please take it over. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. And I appreciate your time and efforts and being a part of this process. I just want to scan the panelists and see that everybody is here. I think we do have, yep, it looks like everybody's here. So thank you guys for taking the time this morning. Kathy Wyatt is also going to help with this process this morning because she's my partner in crime and all of this. She's the person who has a lot of information and I rely on too. So, so welcome to the Washtenaw County Democratic Party General Membership Meeting for October. We will be discussing this morning. Our discussion is about access to affordable housing and how Washtenaw County is attempting to make that happen. And we have several panelists who are experts and experts and knowledgeable about this topic, and passionate as well about it. And so let me just introduce them real quick, and then I'll have them say a few words, and then we'll get started, okay? So our first guest is Christopher Taylor, Mayor of our illustrious Mayor of Ann Arbor. Thank you for being here. Also, we have Amanda Carlisle, who's from the Washtenaw Housing Alliance, and Teresa Gillotti. Am I pronouncing your name right, Teresa? Okay.
Close, Gillotti.
Gillotti. Okay. Teresa Gillotti, and Teresa's with the Office of Community and Economic Development. Did Cedric join us? I'm sorry. I think we don't have Cedric yet. Cedric, are you with us yet? He was going to join us at 10:30. And then we also have Desirae Simmons, who is who's representing Ypsilanti Housing Task Force. And Aubrey, you're going to help me here. Patiño?
Yeah, that's fine. That's the green go version. It's good. Yeah.
Okay, and Aubrey is representing Avalon Housing. And so we will wait for Judge Simmons. I don't see him here. But that was just an introductory of each one of you. So I'm going to start with you, Mayor Taylor, if you would just say a few words, and we'll go down the line.
Excellent. Well, I guess thank you all. Thank you for having me, and by extension us at the panel. The affordable housing is an incredibly important initiative in Ann Arbor and really throughout Washtenaw County. As you'll hear folks tell, and you've probably heard already, Ann Arbor, in our 2015 study is determined to be the 8th most economically segregated county in the country, it's getting worse every day. And with economic segregation, of course, comes segregation of all other kinds. Frankly, that's entirely unacceptable. And so what we need to do in order to address it, at least with respect to Ann Arbor, is create more affordable housing, more housing and more affordable housing. That has been our challenge with respect to Ann Arbor. More people work here, want to live here than can because of the nature of the housing stock, and as a consequence, you'll forgive me for being joined by one of my friends here. As a consequence, housing is unaffordable. The Affordable Housing Needs Assessment in 2015 identified a need for 2,800 units of new permanent affordable housing in Ann Arbor by 2035 in order to forestall permanent economic segregation. We've not gotten very far in that. We have had some successes. I'd warrant tens of millions of dollars to make sure that our existing affordable housing, with respect to the Housing Commission, that those properties are recapitalized, refurbished, and energy efficient, and the types of units that can that make Ann Arbor proud, and the Housing Commission proud, and I hope their residents proud. But going forward, we need more beds for more people. And that's, you'll probably hear about Proposal C. That's what Proposal C is all about. And I am so grateful to everyone in the Partners for Affordable Housing who got this party started. The Proposal C, it's a $1 million millage. It'll raise $6.7 million a year. And based on on estimates of looking at just city-owned properties, we're looking to be able to support the building with that millage over the course of 20 years of anywhere between 1,200 and 1,500 units of new permanent affordable housing. And that is that's for folks with between 0 and 60% AMI, and that would just be an incredible change, an incredible several leaps forward towards our goal, and it's something that's desperately necessary if we're going to have the community that that we want. And so happy to talk about that in the future, what that housing might look like, but also happy and excited to listen to the other panelists who have a lot more subject matter expertise than me.
Okay. So I just want to say to honor to Judge Cedric, if you could raise your hand, because he's an attendee. He came in as an attendee, so we need to make you a panelist. If you could raise your hand, I can go in and make you a panelist as opposed to an attendee. Okay. While we're doing that, let me pass the mantle on to Amanda. Amanda Carlisle with the Washtenaw Housing Alliance. You want to say a few words? You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Like Mayor Taylor, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss housing affordability in Washtenaw County. I'm with the Washtenaw Housing Alliance, and we are a coalition of nonprofit and government entities that are working to end homelessness in Washtenaw County, and we are celebrating our 20th year here this year. Each year, over 5,000 folks experience homelessness in our county, and many more we know are at risk of homelessness or are doubled up and couch surfing and don't have a permanent place and are precariously housed. So our goal is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring or one time. And we are doing a great job, our coalition and partners, we're doing a great job of almost meeting the goals to end homelessness for veteran homelessness. And we really believe that with that as a proof point, we can show that we can end all types of homelessness. And the key factor in being able to do that is really resources and permanent housing. And we have been able to get a lot of resources for veterans through a number of different HUD and VA programs to permanently house folks as quickly as possible and get them out of the shelter system. And we believe that the next step is really getting permanent housing for all folks, individuals, families, across the board in our community. So WHA is a member of the Partners for Affordable Housing. We're really excited about the opportunity that Proposal C presents to us to be able to create up to 1,500 units of new housing, especially for folks experiencing homelessness or on the lower economic stream, but also up to folks that are 0 to 60% of area median income, which equates to about an individual making up to $40,000 a year or a family of 4 making up to $60,000 a year. So a lot of our essential workers and other folks in our community who are working and caring for people in our community but are unable to find housing here. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Amanda. All right, let's go to Teresa. If you can unmute yourself and say a few words as well.
Thanks again for having me. Good morning. I appreciate Mayor Taylor bringing up that 2015 study. So our office worked on that study with Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township, Ypsi City, Ypsi Township, and the Ann Arbor DDA. And what was really interesting about it in 2015 is it identified 2 competing markets, right? Ann Arbor, which is a very expensive housing market for both home ownership and rental, but with very high incomes, right? And then on the east side in Ypsi and Ypsi Township, it's lower rental prices, lower sale prices, but also much lower incomes. And so there is a lot of play around that. And really what that does around the economic segregation and sort of enhancing sort of historical racial segregation and those practices that have been in place in the housing market for years. So the goals out of it really were to try to balance these 2 markets, right? So add more affordable units in those higher markets like Ann Arbor and Pittsfield. If in those 2 communities, we were looking to add 157 units every year for 20 years. To date, we've added 31. Although there are amazingly, yeah, but we have 191 units in the queue in the city of Ann Arbor, which is great work and a testament to a lot of the work that Avalon Housing and the Ann Arbor Housing Commission have done. So I do want to honor, it takes a long time. And the city's effort to look at public land and try to look at for that redevelopment could really accelerate us towards that goal. So it's just kind of important to know some of the barriers that hold us back and some options to really kind of push us to that goal. I do want to acknowledge, though, the market has changed since 2015, and we are seeing rising housing prices throughout the county. And I'm sure Desirae is going to talk about this, even in the city of Ypsilanti, not even in the city of Ypsilanti, Ypsi Township, but also Dexter and Chelsea have both set up housing committees also. it's everywhere throughout the county that we're seeing these higher rents, higher sale prices. And actually the pandemic has not had that much of an impact on these housing costs. So where we thought maybe early on in the pandemic, should we compare this to the housing crisis? Well, no, because we don't have extra stock in housing. We are still in a shortage of that housing. And so to place folks coming out of homelessness, for people who are trying to buy into the market, for people who want to live closer maybe to where they work, with Ann Arbor being a job center, it's still hard to get into those markets. But it's hard throughout the county. And we're finding with people who have housing vouchers, which are often referred to as Section 8, people are getting priced out of Washtenaw County completely. So I just really want to acknowledge that we have a changing kind of situation. And the other piece of it that was a bit of a bummer that's happened over the last couple of years is that we've lost some affordable units to the tune of almost, about 1,000 formerly affordable units have come offline. Again, due to market pressures for the owners who had those affordable units, they took an option to get out of affordability. So that's also exacerbated our situation. So I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, and especially on the intro, but just want to kind of really talk about it being a countywide issue, because it really is, and making sure we have that context. But it is important individually that all the different communities are playing a different role. And I know we're going to hear about at least 2 today, so I can't wait to hear more. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so just in time, Judge Simpson has joined us, and thank you so much, Judge Simpson. He will be covering evictions in Washtenaw County, and so you're just in time to introduce yourself and to say a few words as well. You gotta unmute. There you go.
There we go. Okay, I'm Judge J. Cedric Simpson of the 14A District Court. We are handling eviction cases basically in every jurisdiction outside of Ypsilanti Township and the city of Ann Arbor. Basically, as the process has started up again, we're starting to get into the CARES Act housing, the federal funded housing eviction cases. I'm actually very pleased with how it's proceeding. While there certainly is, and I don't really want to call it a crisis, I think we're on the precipice of a crisis. But I think with legal services, with the assistance of legal services, the assistance of Hawk and the county, we're averting a number of evictions that would normally just proceed through in this county. So I'm hopeful. I do realize, and probably like Teresa, I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, but ultimately, come the beginning of the year, I think we need to take a critical look at what is going to transpire and how we're going to deal with some of the issues. There are people out there with a lot of money owed, and I think the landlords are willing to work with different programs, but I think we have to be creative and inventive in coming up with different programs in order to save people's housing. So that's my basic introduction. Hopefully not too gloomy.
No, we'll have questions for you though about the gloom.
Okay. I can be gloomy on those. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so our next panelist is Desirae Simmons. Desirae, you want to introduce yourself and say a few words as well?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm okay being the gloomy one. It's all right. It's kind of like where I am right now in life. So again, I'm Desirae Simmons. I wear a couple of hats within the housing spaces. So primarily, so I live in Ypsilanti, and I'm part of a subcommittee of the Planning Commission. So we're a subcommittee for housing affordability and accessibility. And we have been working for much past our charter time. So we've been really deep diving into the housing situation here in Ypsilanti for over 2 years now. And so I'm going to share some information we put out a report, which we have presented to the Planning Commission, and then and we are waiting to set a date with the Ypsilanti City Council to have a work session so we can share our presentation with them, as well as working with other housing advocates in the area. But before I kind of say that, I just wanted to kind of like lift up just like a couple of things that are really important to keep in mind. And, you know, with Ypsilanti in particular, and talking about the rising rents and the rising cost of homes here, that one of the things that I'm hearing from folks, so I actually partly own my home with the bank. So I am not as housing insecure as many people that I work with. But some of the things I've been hearing just in terms of right now at this moment during a pandemic, as we're talking about, this potential eviction crisis that we are going to be facing, and that recognizing that a lot of the evictions that happen are happening here in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. Ypsilanti as a city is almost 70% renter. So let's, just to keep those numbers in mind. And what I'm hearing is that some of these rent increases that people are being asked to do as they're looking at doing their leases are, $100 to $200 a month, right? And so we have to recognize that certain increases are evictions, right? Because people are not going to be able to make those kind of increases. And so some people are then trying to be in positions to, negotiate with their landlords. And we have to recognize that there's a power differential, and a lot of the things are asking for people who don't really have a lot of extra time or know-how to understand all the ins and outs of everything, to do all this negotiation with their landlords who have a different power differential. So I think it's important for us to kind of keep that in mind, but recognizing that that is happening here in Ypsilanti. And we have about, at most, like about a 3% vacancy rate. And so we don't have a lot of places for people to go. And since Ypsilanti has been the county's affordable housing plan, where do people go after they can't live in Ypsilanti? And also recognizing the other infrastructure that people need, right? Like when there's not public transportation. Also, people were talking about, when you are an LGBTQ resident or African American, and some of these other people who have disabilities, that there's a lot of different things that there's not many other places to go in this county. And so what do we do? Like, where do we say people can live after that? And so, so I have lots and lots and lots to say about housing, but I'll just leave that there. And then I just want to just say really quickly, just a couple of the things that we found within this, our subcommittee. So basically we did these looking at what the problems are, and none of these are going to be like shaking the house. I think we all kind of know these, but what we found, the other thing is for us, when we think about housing here in Ypsilanti, we can't not talk about gentrification and like kind of these processes that we see in these other ways too. So the cost of housing is increasing steadily. Existing data and measures do not adequately capture the local situation with respect to housing affordability and accessibility. Ypsilanti's old housing stock poses health, safety, and accessibility challenges. Ypsilanti does not have much land available to build new housing, and our current and past policies contribute to our affordability and accessibility challenges, both at the state and local level. And so maybe later on I can share, we have proposed 11 different solutions to these different problems that are both things that can happen within the, like the city council can enact, and then other things that will take more organizing actually really across the state, and that there's a lot of effort in moving. So I look forward to talking about some of those things too. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Desirae. Okay, and for our last but not least panelist, we want to give the floor to Aubrey. Aubrey, you want to have a few words?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Aubrey. I'm the director of Avalon Housing. So we're a supportive housing developer and service provider. We own 292 units. They're scattered over 25 sites. All of those are in Ann Arbor except for one, which is in Chelsea. And we have 144 units in the pipeline. 2 developments in the city of Ann Arbor, and then 1 in Dexter. We're also looking to pursue a 20-unit development in Ypsilanti. In addition to that, you know, we serve folks who are in the private landlord market as well as living in the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. So one of the things that you know, we believe in is that we can't develop our way out of this problem, and full stop, we should not have homelessness in Washtenaw County. It's an absurdity. And, you know, Avalon's mission is really aligned to help get people who are experiencing homelessness permanently and sustainably housed with the combination of services and permanent affordability that we offer them. With that being said, I guess I'll just highlight that as a community, we have a very sophisticated and really kind of sought out system by which we look at people who are experiencing homelessness and we identify their needs, and we really systematically work not to duplicate services, but to really leverage everything we have to get people into housing. And yet we've held steady at roughly, you know, anywhere from like 40 to at sometimes up to 60, but really more at 40 chronically homeless individuals in our community. And that's a very specific definition. I'll just say quickly, it means that you've had multiple episodes of homelessness and have a disabling condition, or that you've been homeless for a year or more. And recently that number has climbed to 90. So that's not pandemic related. We can and will need to do better. So despite all of this great work that we're doing, we are still operating in the chaos and complacency that allows for homelessness in this community. I'm really excited about what is possible with Prop C. And I want to highlight, Mayor Taylor did mention, you know, we can develop 1,500 new units. 375 of those could be supportive housing, because 20% of the revenue can go to services, and that's critical. And I think that's gonna really help us move the needle on addressing homelessness. But we have to do something about the larger market, and we have to do that countywide.
Okay, thank you, Aubrey. Okay, first off, let me just do a public service announcement to the attendees that are here and say, if you have questions for any of the panelists, add them into the chat and we'll make sure that your questions are going to be answered, okay? But let me start off with a question, and thank you again, guys. This is really a hot topic in Washtenaw County. You know, fortunately, I live in an area where, you know, my husband and I have owned our home for 20 some odd years, and you know, in a neighborhood where we're the only people that look like us. And so, I mean, not fortunate that we're the only people who look like us, but it's that, you know, we don't see other people, and it's disheartening to see that there's no other folks, you know, African-American here in Ann Arbor. And we had to fight to get here, for one thing. But so my question is, there are several organizations, housing organizations, in, you know, 10 or more in Washtenaw County, and you know, that are working on this project. Why? And I think you mentioned something earlier, Teresa, about the, you know, the hurdles. Why is this still such a problem that we can, you know, these organizations can't get together and solve? And Mayor Taylor, I want you to address the issue of U of M. I read the article about U of M. I'd like to hear about, and I think others would like to hear about, why isn't U of M being made accountable? So I'm going to pose that question, and you guys could answer. Why is it we have so many organizations that's working on this issue and we haven't solved it yet? And so we can start with you, Teresa, since you brought it up.
Oh, good. Well, I'm going to throw out some stuff, and I think Desirae has kind of lifted some of these up. There are some tools that are not available to us in Michigan that have been very useful in other places. That is not to say that we shouldn't be surrounding it, but I do want to call them out. For example, in the 2015 study, there's like 2 pages of recommendations, and unfortunately, I would say probably a third of them we could not do in Michigan. The one that we would love to have our hands on is something called inclusionary zoning. And what it would do is it would allow local jurisdictions to set a standard in their zoning ordinance that would say any developments of a certain scale, usually it's like 5 or more units, whether it's a subdivision with home ownership, whether it's apartments, anything would require that 20% of those units would have to be affordable. The reason why this is helpful is that it applies it across the board. So you don't have those challenges of a development coming up before planning commission or city council and neighbors coming out and saying, well, we like it, we just don't want it here for various reasons, maybe some legitimate, maybe some not. But what it does is it sets an expectation across the board. So that's not something we have in play. I know that Senator Irwin was looking at possibly proposing something to the state. I think that's something in progress, but it's a tool that we don't even have in our toolkit. So a couple of things that have happened is Ann Arbor, I think, has done a really nice job of looking at its zoning ordinances and some other incentives, and even within the last year, tweaking them so that they're building it in so they can require some things if it's voluntary. So if there's a voluntary choice by a developer to have, say, increased height or density in the downtown, then there would be a requirement for affordable housing. If voluntarily the developer who's using brownfield plan, a tax increment financing wants to use that tool, then they would have to require affordable housing. So that's the way we have to frame it. We can't require it or mandate it. It has to be through these incentives. And so I only bring it up because it's like the easiest thing is harder. So then we have to try and shift locally, tool by tool, review them and update them in various jurisdictions to try and make it available. So that's one reason. I would say another reason in certain markets is the cost of land is very expensive and the market for it is tight. And Aubrey can probably give you tons of examples. For most affordable housing developers, especially nonprofit partners, it takes a while to get your financing together to build the deal. And so if you're competing with market rate developers, you can get outbid very quickly and not have access to that property. That's one of the reasons that looking at public land that is controlled by a local jurisdiction or a county or the state is one of the tools that's available to communities to build affordable housing. There's also cost, which I'll also leave to others. But I'm trying to think of the other bigger barriers. I think I will also say community pressure. I just want to put that out there. I feel like every single time, maybe once, developments come up, there's a lot of community pressure, and there's a lot of reasons why, and we can unpack that today. And I'd like to not have affordable.
Pressure to not have affordable housing. Yeah. I heard about that. The hit, what are they called? The not in my backyard, the in my backyard.
Exactly. And that's a real tangible challenge. I'm going to leave that to others to jump in on it, but that's a conversation because we need as many supporters out for each of these cases as those against it. Otherwise, it's really hard for a politician, I think, for an elected official to say, I'm getting all these calls of people with concerns. Am I getting calls for people that say it's needed? Not always. And so it puts them in a very difficult spot. So I'll leave it at that and hand it over to Mayor Taylor.
Okay. Mayor Taylor.
Sure. Well, a couple of points to pick up on. I'd like to, on that last point, we do have opportunities for affordable housing that where at least in Ann Arbor, it loses at the council table. The Lockwood development would have put somewhere, if I recollect correctly, in the neighborhood of 40 units of permanent senior housing in the pipeline, rejected at council. Burton Road, a site which has had quite a lot of conversation over the years, a proposal, and these numbers escape me, but to alter to alter the mix so as to provide for additional units, which would have been, as I recollect, also senior and also affordable housing, rejected at the council table. We were going to, so there's, there are those sorts of pressures. Sometimes these things pass, sometimes they don't. Also, we have had resource problems. And when I say resource problems, I mean not enough money being spent on the matter. We have not. This is one of the beautiful promises of Proposal C, a dedicated funding stream by law obligated to be used for the purpose. We haven't had that before.
Is that what the millage is for?
That's correct. The millage is going to be used by law, because, we're going out to the voters, this asking for a tax, and the ballot language is very specific. It's going to be used for affordable housing, and with respect to the construction of units, I think the capital improvement of existing units, and up to 20% of millage proceeds for services for residents of these affordable housing units. This is not an opportunity for council in 20 years to take these millage monies and shift buckets of money from here to here and use this money for something else. The millage money is going to be used for affordable housing. It's going to be used for services provided to residents of this affordable housing. Full stop.
One of the things I read, Mayor Taylor, is that this millage or there is information about the affordable housing being in a flood zone. That didn't sit well with me. What is that about?
I don't know exactly what it is that you've read. The bottom line is that any housing that is built anywhere will meet applicable standards. So.
Okay. And then what about U of M? There's also been some concern about U of M. Why can't we tackle the issue with U of M? They don't pay any taxes here in Ann Arbor, and they are the biggest use of land here in Ann Arbor, right?
Yeah, that is a great question. The bottom line is that the University of Michigan is it's an entity that's created by the state constitution. As a consequence, it's in the governmental hierarchy, it is essentially on par with the legislature, far superior to the city. The University of Michigan doesn't have to follow our planning guidelines. It doesn't have to follow our zoning. It doesn't follow our sign ordinances. It doesn't follow any rule that we promulgate, period, full stop. It also owns land and has billions of dollars. And so the University of Michigan, with respect to its own playground, kind of just does what it wants. They talk to us. We do collaborate. I don't want to say that they're out to get us. Not at all.
No.
Having the university here is a blessing, and there isn't a mayor or anybody who thinks carefully about a jurisdiction who wouldn't cut off their right arm to have the University of Michigan in the backyard. They are they're the engine of the community. Period. At the same time, they have a mission. And their mission is not to create affordable housing in the city of Ann Arbor. Their mission is to be a world-class leader in higher education and research. It's necessary for them to achieve that goal, to have Ann Arbor be good, to be attractive to people, but it's not their main goal.
Right.
They have expanded, and I'll be done with this in just a sec. They've expanded over the past couple of years, which has not been good for the housing market in our community. It has resulted in the market building to student demand, which isn't optimal for folks who work in Ann Arbor. And also, the university has chosen not to use its own land and its own resources to build additional housing. This is something that I frequently bring up, but it's also something where we have no leverage. The university will do what the university will do in this context.
Wow.
Can I just add in here, because I think there's like a couple of just like quick things, because with the university, I mean, I really think that how somehow we have to get a strategy around this, because they do say that it's not in their, why should they care about affordable housing, but they're not even building housing for their students, right? And so, we know that over the past so many years that enrollment, that they are enrolling more and more and more students, but with no care about where those folks live. And what does that pressure do? And then having to hire more and more staff in order to provide services for those students. So where do those folks go? And, and then you come, to Ypsi, like I'm one of these folks. I came here, got a job at the University of Michigan, was earning about $50,000, which is above the median here in Ypsilanti. And so Ypsilanti was affordable for me, where nowhere else would have been affordable for me. And so recognizing that role in that process is something that I think that as a community we need to do. And if it takes, to the mayor's point that it's something that we need to look at the state, then we need to be doing that too. And just to say, some of these different things like the inclusionary zoning, another big thing that we are currently unable to do in the state of Michigan is due to a preemption against rent control, which is something that, you know, here in Ypsilanti would make a big difference, since and I think also in Ann Arbor, where you have a few landlords who own a lot of properties who actually set the price, because then all the other renter landlords are setting their prices accordingly to what those large property owners are setting. And so we here can have one landlord who's setting the rental prices for all the prices here, right? And so we see that there's actually rent control, but it's in private hands. And also, and one of the solutions, one of the things that we put forward is that at Ypsilanti, we have a housing trust fund, but there is no funding source for it. And so, the money that was in there has been used, and we hope that we will be able to have that replenished, but we don't have another source of funding. And so one of the things that we're looking to is for the universities to be putting some money into these funds to help us to be able to provide
all of the universities, Desirae? Are you talking all of the universities, or are you talking just U of M?
We talked about U of M and EMU.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so, and then I think the one thing, you know, in terms of public pressure, I think it is important. And it's not only that there aren't people who come out to say there is a need, it's that there are differences in the positionalities of the people who come out to say that there's a need. And so it's, again, a power dynamic in terms of who's used to being listened to and who people do listen to in terms of privilege and power in spaces. And I think it's so important. I mean, this is like a narrative shift, but just as like for all of us, that we have to also be thinking about, this is not just about the issue that we have today, that if we say that we will not be building more housing, what we're saying is that we are condemning part of our country to die, because the climate crisis is not going away. We live in a place of this country where people are going to need to move, period, full stop. You know, that's just 20 years from now, we're going to be having an inflow of folks. And so if we are not prepared for that, what we're saying is that you can't be here and we don't care. And so we need people to like really understand that in a deep way, because it's not about like, does my neighborhood look pretty anymore? It's about, do I care about all of humanity?
Exactly, yeah. All right, I want to give Amanda a chance to have to talk about this issue too of, I first posed a question about how there are all these organizations and why we, you know, are there obstacles in your, from your perspective that that's being faced? And we don't want to talk just about the obstacles, but also too about, you know, what you guys are doing. You're doing some wonderful work. I understand that, but apparently we're not making it work in the way that's going to help people. Like I said, I don't see people in my neighborhood, you know, who look like me, and we need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one kind of just, you know, thing to talk about around the number of agencies. We have been very strategic in how the agencies work together, also what they do. So there may be a lot of nonprofits and agencies that are working on this issue, but oftentimes they are working for a specific population and they have expertise and knowledge for that specific population. So example, Safe House is our only DV provider. Ozone House is our youth provider. You know, we have certain agencies that are providing emergency shelter. We have agencies that are providing the access door. And we have agencies that are providing permanent housing. And so they're all doing sort of like individual work, but they're working as a system of care. And we've worked really hard over the last 10 years or so to ensure that there's no duplication of services, that people are funneled, and also that people have options. So oftentimes that's, you know, something where, you know, it might not work out with one agency because of the style of the, you know, the consumer and the style of the provider. They need to have another option to be able to go elsewhere for services and get, you know, emergency shelter elsewhere. And so, you know, we have this system in place, and it might look like there's a lot of organizations, but the reality is they're all working together really well in coordination and on specific parts of our system of care, because it does take sort of a continuum of options in order to get folks from being homeless to housed or at risk and preventing them from ever, you know, entering the homeless system of care. And then I think the other piece is really around resources. I think Desirae mentioned that, Teresa mentioned that, Aubrey, you know, we don't have enough resources in order to be able to serve everybody who comes to the door. So typically emergency shelter in times when we don't have winter expansion, we have oftentimes a 6-week waiting list for emergency shelter. That's really unacceptable. Emergency shelter is emergency and people need to be able to access that. And we won't be able to have less of a waiting list until we have more housing on the back end so that we can get folks out of our shelter and make it really so that folks aren't spending much time in shelter. That's not the goal by any means, but we don't have that permanent housing on the back end to be able to get folks out. I had mentioned kind of the veterans specifically because that's kind of a smaller system within our system of care, and because there have been so many resources in place, our average length of time that a homeless veteran is experiencing homelessness in our community is under 90 days. And that's really incredible work that our agencies have been doing in collaboration to get folks, you know, quickly into and out of shelter and into a permanent housing unit, getting maybe some subsidy, helping them increase employment or income opportunities, get the benefits that they need. And so that's a real area of our system where we've been able to tighten everything up, get folks in and out, but it's because those permanent housing resources are on the back end. And so Prop C is certainly something, you know, the city of Ann Arbor has had the Affordable Housing Fund, I think maybe 20, 30 years and never had, you know, a dedicated, I know since 97, maybe even before that, but we've never had a dedicated funding stream or revenue stream. And this is really the first opportunity with Prop C to be able to have that dedicated funding stream so that we can, you know, build the units that we need.
And that's if the millage pass, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I just want to add one quick thing, which is that the reason that we've been effective with veterans, in addition to how the system is coordinated, is ultimately because we're doing something to intervene on behalf of veterans that uses the market, which is that we're using housing subsidy on market rate units. So I think just to bring that into this, why have we not been as successful as we are? Because the market is disproportionately unaffordable and it's not meeting the needs of everyone across socioeconomic strata. Housing choice vouchers, scaling rent subsidies for people that you can lay onto market rate units is a solution. It's a solution that Avalon has deployed. We're serving roughly 150 folks in Ypsi, predominantly in Ypsi, because that's where we can actually afford to use housing choice vouchers. But as noted earlier, that's sort of becoming less and less of an option. So I do just want to, you know, from a federal kind of advocacy standpoint, that is a solution that we need to be advocating for, in addition to trying to develop and build, because we do just have a supply issue as well, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to, I'm going to open it up to some questions. I think Kathy might have been looking over some questions that we have. So we have some panelists, attendees who have some questions. And Kathy, do you have one that you want to?
Yep. Actually, one of the things it's sort of two-part, and whoever wants to chime in, please do, and maybe multiple people. So too often people think of housing just in terms of the dwelling itself, having a roof, and they don't think about it in terms of all the other societal issues that are impacted by being housed. So there are two things that I thought maybe people could talk about. And one is how important supportive housing, which is part of this millage, is to issues around mental health and substance use disorder recovery. You know, that we've passed this mental health millage, but without housing, I'd like somebody to talk about how important housing is in those recovery areas. And also another thing that's very important to the whole county, but also Ann Arbor particularly, is transportation, jobs, and how that relates to the environment and quality of life in the city. So if, again, two-part question. One around mental health and substance use. second around transportation and employment and how that relates to the environment in the city. So
who do you want to start?
whoever wants to start with whichever one.
Oh, I'll take a stab at the first one. Thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. So, you know, housing is, it's one of the most important social determinants of health. It can absolutely serve as a platform for recovery. We as a community operate in what we call housing first, which is, you know, this is an evidence-based model where years ago we used to make assumptions about sort of behavioral changes people needed to make to prove readiness for housing. and data showed that to be highly ineffective and incredibly stigmatizing. And in fact, what people need to stabilize their lives is a roof over their head and to have basic needs met. So we don't treat housing as a reward for clinical success in our community. We treat it as a basic human right. So everything that we do is to try to get people housed as quickly as possible, as low barrier as possible. And what we find is that in fact, people do stabilize in multiple different areas. And as you noted, you know, certainly around recovery, but also just physical health related needs. We were part of a large national study of high utilizers of emergency health systems who are homeless and had chronic health conditions. We know that during that time, our highest utilizer cost our community $1.2 million before we housed her. And she had 3 hospitalizations over a period of 5 years after coming into housing. She cost our system nothing after we got her housed, right? So that's an anecdote, but that anecdote is indicative of a larger message, which is that we have to address housing as a social determinant. And that is only possible when we are providing services and supports to people that are individualized, that are community-based, that are available to them in their homes. Certainly that's what supportive housing looks to do. So it looks to kind of look at each household's needs and bring services to them that fits those needs. And it tends to be very barrier-free and often of long duration. So, you know, human beings have needs throughout their lives, and permanent supportive housing is built on the notion that many of the folks that we serve will permanently need these supports, not everybody. And we support those who are ready to move on. But it is, you know, there's a subset of the population who do have long-term needs. So, you know, I think the healthcare sector has woken up to social determinants, certainly over the last 5 years. How the healthcare sector is really making, you know, upstream investment in addressing social determinants, you know, the jury's out. But it is refreshing that there is this, I think, kind of awakening around how critical housing is in that conversation. And certainly we see the evidence of that play out every single day when we keep 95% of the folks that we house housed permanently.
So what you're saying what you're saying is that housing, permanent supportive housing, can actually save money in the long run for our communities. And
yeah, I mean, so, you know,
to note.
Yeah, I think that if you know, most of the studies have been pre-post, so there's a lot to say about like what randomized controlled trials show in terms of cost savings. With that being said, 100%, it's way less cost effective to have someone sitting in a shelter for a day, or to have someone in a jail bed for a day, or to be hitting our ER multiple times a month than it is to put them in PSH, 100%. Not to mention what that does for their quality of life.
Absolutely.
And not, you know, in addition to dignity and everything else. And when we started our Fuse initiative as a community, you know, within the first year, 9 people died that we moved in because we got to them too late. They were very sick. One thing that we've seen is, so we as a community have what's called a by name list. So anybody who is experiencing homelessness, we know who they are, we know where they are, and we know what their needs are. And there's a common assessment tool that's being used where we kind of are essentially able to look at like, what is their level of need? We've watched over the years that level of need has actually gone down. So I'm really proud of that. We as a community have really done some deep work to get the highest need folks into housing and keeping them housed, but we're watching the numbers go up. And so I think, you know, making sure that we continue to deploy this tactic, and certainly the millage is going to allow us to, I think, you know, make a substantive impact in a way that we've not yet been able to.
And
I just was going,
sort of add to that, that I handle a criminal docket also. And I will tell you that, and I've felt for some 30 years now, that you can't work with somebody within our criminal justice system unless they're stable in a number of different regards. The base of that really is their home. My probation department has great difficulty monitoring, sort of keeping people in place, keeping them in check, offering them services if they don't have this domicile or this residence. That then has, in my mind, and has over time, can have catastrophic effects for people. Because the moment I ask them to do something, and it could be a very simple task, if you don't have this base that you're sort of launching from to have that happen, they end up in trouble. They end up not in non-compliance with the court. And you mentioned, you know, the cost of keeping somebody in jail. Well, when they don't comply, they can't comply, then we're bringing them back. We're doing things. And then when you start talking about behaviors, yes, their behavior changes. They in a lot of ways, they're lashing out, but you can't get them under control. They end up somehow and or another incarcerated again. Then you're trying to get them out, but you know, for example, if I want to put somebody out and their behavior is out of control and I want to put them on a tether, if you don't have a home, you don't have a phone line that I can hook that tether to, I can't get you out. So when you want to talk about the cost, we're paying to keep somebody incarcerated who really doesn't need to be incarcerated. And that doesn't even deal with the mental health issue in terms of it. But, you know, I would agree just from, you know, I don't have to really have a study. I see it every day that people that have mental health issues, if they don't have that, what I like to call it sort of that comfort zone, that place that they can go to, that place that where everything, well, not everything, but some of the things that they need and they have to have in life are there. We just have individuals that quite frankly are out of control through no fault of their own. And so it has a huge impact, not just on sort of part of the system that everybody may see every day. It has a huge impact on our whole sort of judicial and criminal justice system. And I won't go into what it does to kids and that kind of thing. I mean, because we see that every day. So, you know, ultimately, if for no other reason, that's why we have to provide housing. Because I think a lot of things, a lot of the ills of society decrease when people have a stable environment in which they can return from whatever they may be doing that day or may not be doing that day.
I think just, yeah, I just wanted to kind of add some things here in Ypsi, because I think what folks are saying is so true. You know I myself am a prison industrial complex abolitionist, and that's one of the reasons I am focused in housing, because we know that when thinking about some of the root causes of things, that housing is such a big one, because this is something that people need, and and when folks are insecure in this area, that there are a lot of challenges. And we know, you know, I was having a conversation with folks in the sheriff's department as an example, and saying that actually one of the hardest things and biggest needs for folks trying to re-enter is around housing. One of the reasons that people wind up in the county jail is due to being, you know, because they're housed with someone else doing this other thing, and they're couched up here, or you know, they can't go back to this place because of, you know, that there's a lot of housing issues that are helping to lead people into those spaces. And so very much so are there these ties that I think is so important. And I know here in Ypsilanti, we, to our non-discrimination ordinance, we added that if you have a felony record, that falls within our non-discrimination ordinance. And I know from that, one of the big things is around housing. And I know personally, just like talking to folks, talking to a father with this kid, and he's just like, it's so hard for me to find a place that's safe for me and my child, and that I can also get to the bus to. And, I was meeting him because we're walking to a bus together because we had missed a bus. So we want to have this whole conversation. And he talked about like even how he was to get to the bus stop where we were supposed to go, how he has to jump over, all these things, but that is what was available to him. And that it is really hard to find that. And so I think that's important. And a transportation issue is so important, here in Ypsilanti. So it's great because we do have the buses. And I also will say, as a person, so I don't drive. I never learned to drive. I lived in cities before moving here. And so, I count on the public transportation, and it's harder for me to get from one side of Ypsi to the next side of Ypsi than it is for me to get from Ypsi to Ann Arbor. And that's in part because our public transportation is built around, how it's built to get folks into Ann Arbor and out of Ann Arbor, but not necessarily within their own communities. So I think that's something that we need to think about, because then within Ypsi, you have folks having to drive around all over all the time too. And if you don't have resources, so like working with folks at Sycamore Meadows as an example, where for them to get to a grocery store, it takes over an hour. And if you have, I don't know, more than one child or even one, but trying to do that, that becomes something that you can't do. So now it cuts off access to other things that you need, right? So anyway, I think the housing and transportation ties are so important for us to keep in mind too.
So, Desirae, offline, I want to talk to you about not driving. On another note, so I do want to get to the issue of zoning. And Kathy, I know you had, I don't know if you wanted everybody to answer that question. And if anybody else wants to, talk about, answer Kathy's question, go right ahead. But I also want to get to zoning because my house, my husband and I are empty nesters now. We have a 4-bedroom house, and we'd love to be able to take, the bottom portion of our house and rent it out to whatever, but zoning is really a peach. So yeah, go ahead and answer that.
So let me just cycle back a little bit on the question of transportation. Obviously, when we think about where we can build housing that's affordable, where it's best for us to invest first and most, access to transportation is an important part of it. But in addition, it's also important that we let the market do some work. Right now, we have in Ann Arbor, a bunch of transit corridors. We've got Stadium, we've got, South State, Huron, Jackson, Stadium, Washtenaw. None of these, we need, I believe, to have, development, zoning, getting to zoning that incentivizes, property owners along these corridors to build, not to build strip malls, but to build mixed-use developments. Retail is excellent. I love having shops up and down the way, but there needs to be housing there. There needs to be a market solution to incentivize, encourage, and support, and not support through taxes, but to unleash the demand of people who want to live in Ann Arbor, who would want to live on transit corridors, who would be able to take public transportation in and out of Ann Arbor to employment centers. Transit-oriented development is something that I've wanted us to do for quite some time. Have zoning districts for it. City Council back in the spring, rejected a call to this Ann Arbor Planning Commission to bring us transit-oriented development districts. I believe that with the coming of a new council, that there's going to be a re-upped request for that, and I hope swift action. We can ourselves, with our partners, build affordable units, but units that are on on transit corridors will, of their nature, they're not going to be affordable by HUD definitions, but they're going to be targeted you know, I'm going to make up numbers, you know, they'll be targeted 60 to 80 to 100% AMI. They're going to be places where people who work in Ann Arbor, who are now priced out of Ann Arbor, can come and live in Ann Arbor. And that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, exactly.
With respect to zoning, you also raise it, you know, you're kind of touching upon, you know, the use of someone's current property for rentals. You know, you know, right now we in Ann Arbor don't have a lot of freedom for property owners to create accessory dwelling units. You know, City Council back, I guess, about a year and change ago rejected an opening up of accessory dwelling units, opened up, you know, rejected a proposal to expand the zoning districts in which current property owners are able to construct accessory dwelling units for, you know, for renting out to, you know, to family members or otherwise. You know, I believe too that this is something that the new council is going to take a look at and take a quick look at. You know, it is it's, you know, we're leaving housing on the table when we prevent people from doing this sort of thing with their property.
That's very true. And the other thing too is, Mayor Taylor, our city council needs some more people who look like me on the council. We really do. And that's been a big issue.
And I wonder, this is kind of a question or a response to some zoning. So within our recommendations, we had a couple of zoning related solutions, which include, you know, lifting restrictions to reducing restrictions for construction or conversion of multi-unit homes, ADUs, which there's a lot of things around accessory dwelling units. I mean, because they can also be really expensive to put in if you have, you know, depending on plumbing and all these different things. So there's a lot of things to them. And then smaller scale homes. But one of the things that we were asked, this is something that was passed down to our commission to look at from council, which is increasing the number. So within R1, I think, increasing the number of unrelated adults that can live within a dwelling. And so in Ypsi, it was, I think it's like 3 unrelated adults. And so what we were trying to raise it to is 2 unrelated persons per bedroom within a dwelling.
In Ypsi?
That's something that, so in Ypsi. So it hasn't happened yet. This is one of the things that we're proposing, a change to the current ordinance to lift that so that more people who are not related could live within a space. And this is something that people, you know, especially millennials and other folks that don't, you know, really don't have the economic mobility to be able to purchase homes, even if they want to, that folks might purchase, you know, try to go in together or like have one person who owns it and then like kind of, you know, have folks or people trying to live cooperatively in unofficial ways. And so, and I don't know if that's an issue in Ann Arbor, whether there's an ordinance that is around how many people can live in that space. And
there is.
You know,
sure.
Yeah, there is an ordinance, and not only that, but when I looked at doing accessory dwelling, we're still looking at that. But again, my husband and I are empty nesters. Our kids are out of the house, and in order for us to do this, we'd have to agree to live here forever. So I have a bi-level where there's 3 bedrooms up and 2 and a a mother-in-law apartment downstairs. And in order for us to rent that out and rent both sections, if we want to leave, we have to agree to live here, and we have to have our mortgage changed to say that we will, you know, we'll live here. That sounds like slavery to me. I'm really not happy with that. So I'm going to work as hard as I can to help us get that changed. It's really ridiculous. Okay, that's my soapbox.
That's the deed restriction thing that you have to do. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah.
Yes, restrictions in order for us to provide housing. If we want to move and, you know, go to Atlanta with our oldest daughter and just turn this into rental property, there's so many hoops that we have to meet in order to make that happen. And it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. And that's the next issue I'll be tackling after this election. Okay. We do have some questions that some people in the chat are posing. Kathy, do you have those? Do you have other questions? You got to unmute.
I did actually put one in the chat, and I think we did not get one answered about the impact on environment in the city when you have everyone having to come drive to jobs into the city, and as opposed to having housing much closer. Somebody wants to talk about that. But I also think it would be important to talk about the lack of secure, stable housing on children. This is a community that talks about the importance of children. And I think it'd be good to really address what happens to children who are, and the negative impacts if they are housing insecure. Anybody wants to address that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs study was done, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now. We know, I mean, to this day, I'll say I think it's the biggest public health issue of our time, trauma. And when children experience housing instability, their educational outcomes are impacted, their physical health is impacted. Amongst the chronically homeless population in this country, we know that at least 65% of them had child welfare involvement when they were kids. So if we want to do something about homelessness, let's do something about child welfare system. And I think sort of akin to our earlier conversation, at the end of the day, when all of these systems of care continue to see housing as an afterthought, they will fail. The criminal justice system will fail, the child welfare system will fail, the healthcare system will fail. And so at some point, housing needs to be at the forefront of the intervention. And when I see a reentry program that pours lots of money into case management or therapy, great. But if you took every one of those dollars and poured it into housing, you'd probably be more effective. So, I mean, when we house families who are coming out of homelessness at Avalon, what I can tell you is that it is a hard road in terms of what that first year typically looks like, particularly in terms of educational outcomes and sort of the level of support that they need. But long-term gains are incredible. Like what I have seen, intergenerational impact, the way that these kids stabilize, the way that they're able to integrate into the community and do well at school and be healthy and play in nature and all of these things, you know, it's one of the greatest gifts of this work. And just watching parents who've had that kind of hypervigilance taken off of their shoulders day in and day out. We have many, many moms who, have lost their kids or have had child welfare involvement in the past. And when they move in with Avalon, that all goes away forever. So it's a fairly easy solution. And I appreciate you uplifting that issue.
Honestly,
just because I'm in Ypsi, I think about, I know here, YCS, the number, so they actually kind of do direct support for families who are homeless for their, for their students, and have been seeing that there's an increase in students that are homeless within YCS, right? And so, recognizing that YCS is a school district, we're not going to get into funding of school districts and inequities there, but here we have a school system that already is underfunded, and also with a population of folks that are vulnerable in all these different ways, and trying to provide supports for them. And so I just want to lift up that I think that they are, really trying to do that work and dealing with increasing homelessness among their students. And then, so when we think about right now, right, where, people are supposed to be remote, technology needs, right, that they have to then figure out how to make sure that those students can be serviced, and how to make sure that the families are able to be stable enough, right, to even keep their kids in school. And I know, just from my own personal life growing up, and having to move around a lot because of home instability, how much I missed in that, right? And it's great. I get to be a full adult now, but recognizing that it takes a lot of interventions for that to be able to happen. And so I think it's so important to say that. And I just wanted to say another thing to tie the environment, the zoning environment thing too, is when looking at development and thinking about like how many parking spaces they need to have, and that there's a lot of folks are trying to change some of that to be able to make building some housing easier to do. But again, if we have better public transportation, then that makes it more easy, right? Because then you don't have to have two people in the house having two cars and needing parking spaces for both of those vehicles, right? And that can be really important. Although I would love to say, like, if there is a transit supported zone in Ann Arbor, please let's not make it only a market-based solution. We have to stop thinking about housing in that way. And we need to think about, like, who are the people who can't afford cars and car insurance? They need to be near public transportation. So if there is something like that, I know I will definitely be pushing to make sure that we are holding some of that housing for people under 60% AMI, which in Ann Arbor is like $60,000 to $80,000 or something like that. So.
All right, let's go to Teresa. I know you have something to say, and then after that, I have a question for Brian. There's some, I'm sorry, for Judge Simpson. So go ahead, Teresa.
Just quickly, I mean, I know Kathy threw out that environment question. We've been dancing around it, but similar to kind of what we're talking about, I think that we're talking about all these other things, and what's the symptom and what's the problem? For me, sort of the issue around some of the public transit needs and wanting to expand it, that's not it's trying to fix the problem, which is housing is not where it's supposed to be. Affordable housing is not where we need it. Ann Arbor is the employment center of our region. University of Michigan Hospital together have more employees than the next top 20 employers combined. So that incredible draw, the number of people who are commuting in every day to those places, but others, all those traffic trips, I think Kathy was reaching at, is where we're putting more carbon into the environment. To whatever extent we can get more units in Ann Arbor, I would say more units in general and absolutely more affordable. But I mean, supply is a big problem and we need affordable. It's not, we need both and in this scenario. And that's part of the issue that we're facing. So if we can get that together, we're going to be reducing already all of those traffic trips, the congestion that, you know, when we're not in a pandemic is not something that we enjoy, going back and forth in and out of Ann Arbor. And it's going to address a lot of those things just naturally, because again, housing is more of the challenge here. And then then we experience it in challenges to the public transportation system, all these health issues that we're talking about, trauma, absolutely. And all that housing has to be safe, and there has to be safe and affordable throughout the county. So that's all for that.
Somebody mentioned looking at housing as a human right, as opposed to looking at it as a business proposition. And so, I don't know. I mean, that just makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So Judge Simpson, somebody posed a question about hearing eviction cases. Can you speak to that? They're asking, they're saying that the CDC has declared declaration to hear and just cancel eviction hearings. What do you say to that?
To canceling eviction hearings? Well,
yeah,
I think that those that are calling for that, first of all, don't understand the courts, or at least the judge's statutory obligations and what the law is. We can't just stop hearing the cases. So
during the pandemic, has there been a moratorium on hearing the eviction cases? I'm just looking at this question here.
Okay. During the way it started out, without sort of backtracking all the way to March, when the courts closed in March, we did not, of course, hear those cases. We were then placed administratively on a process to handle cases in a certain fashion. So the criminal cases and those that were incarcerated took precedence. The moratorium on evictions went into place. It was at that point not something that the court was going to then hear eviction cases. There wasn't a way to file the eviction cases. There wasn't a remedy. And so it wasn't until the moratorium got lifted, the state moratorium got lifted, that the cases could then be heard. We began hearing the cases. We a new process was put into place as to how those cases were heard. I think it unrealistic that courts won't hear eviction cases, but I think it's also important for people to understand that the cases that courts are hearing on eviction cases are both termination cases, which may involve behaviors of individuals. They're not all just non-payment of rent cases. And so there are some people who, or some circumstances where those cases really have to go forward, where there's drug use in the communities and other things that somebody has to deal with them. But the proposals or the statements of people that courts should just stop hearing eviction cases, that's not going to happen. It's not legally, we can't do that. The ideas that come forth that we should then not issue orders of eviction, again, it is not something the courts can do. You'll have to talk to those in the political realm, particularly on a statewide basis, to have that happen. Even putting the pressure on the commissioners or city officials or township officials that they should stop it. They don't have the power to stop it. I don't have the power to stop it as a judge to not do it. I took an oath to do my job, and I have to have those cases come forth, or I have to proceed with those cases. Even the idea that the courts, for example, won't issue evictions or won't execute on evictions, it can't happen that way. Those are, and I don't mean this badly, but there's simplistic solutions to something, and ultimately we're going to have to deal with it. So it just won't occur that way. I mean, people may like for that to happen. It just won't. Now, having said that, I think there is also a great misconception that there are evictions occurring all over the county.
Yeah, it sounds like that. And who's being evicted? Who are the people that are being evicted? Are these, law-abiding, working class folks that are being evicted, or who is it?
Well, that's a good question, because, I have since March, I think by our last count, I've only signed about 20 orders of eviction. That's it. And my docket is huge. And there's now a process by which somebody is even going to get that order, where there's going to be a hearing, so I can make sure that all of the programs that are now in place, an individual has an opportunity to take advantage of. Very few of those are on non-payment cases. The evictions that are being signed are on termination cases, which will usually involve some health or safety issue. They will involve some issue of violence, or they will involve drug use or something else along those lines. So, I think it's important that people understand that people may say they think they know what's going on. I'm not clear that they do. The way the courts are set up now, where we're doing things virtually, anyone who thinks they know what's going on, I think I'd invite them to attend any of the 3 district courts here. You can join us on YouTube. You can see us for myself every Friday, for 50th District Court on Tuesday, and for 14B on Wednesday. And you can see how the process actually is going. And so, the evictions aren't occurring, at least in what I like to call the out county, because we're different than the city of Ann Arbor. And I don't mean to say anything bad about the city of Ann Arbor. I grew up there. But we operate a little bit differently. And so that includes the city of Ypsi, where we're not, the orders aren't coming from the court at a rate that people think that it's actually happening. And we're working, you know, Teresa and I, every other Wednesday are sitting in a 7:30 in the morning meeting and having just a
Good for
blast.
you.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of awake. But, you know, but what we're carving out and what we're doing is really looking at solutions to how to deal with some of the issues, particularly around the primary effect of the pandemic, which has been the loss of income and evictions occurring in that fashion. Because that, I think, is really the most immediate sort of threat or thing that will happen that will cause a great deal of homelessness.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I think and I'll speak for my colleagues on the other two benches, I think we've been very successful in preventing those from proceeding by the process that we're engaged in, but also with the help of Housing Access for Washtenaw County and with the help of legal services. We've been able to identify people, get to people, find funding, provide an opportunity for them to pay a portion of their rent, provide an opportunity for them to now dig themselves out of the hole in a way. The only thing none of us have control over is what our economy is going to do, and are these people going to be employed so that they can sustain their housing? And that's going to be the real big question, ultimately, as we sort of proceed down the path.
This is my first time hearing that. Are you guys making this well known? I mean, do people know about this? How do you said identifying, so that sounds like it's a proactive thing, as opposed to people you having droves of people coming and saying, hey, I need help.
Right. Well, the first thing is that with and these are parts of the process that have changed. So there is sort of, I won't call them public service announcements, but there are flyers out there in communities alerting people to the different programs that are available. In addition to that, with every mailing on every landlord-tenant case, there is an additional flyer with additional information and contact information that goes out to every tenant who is going to come before the court. Outside of that, then, on their first hearing, and we really are required to, in most cases, to have 2 hearings. On their first hearing, there is a 2-page document that I read that explains why they're there in general. It explains their right to an attorney, where they can receive legal assistance, and then where they can receive then financial assistance. The first one sort of directing them to Legal Services of South Central Michigan. The second one regarding financial assistance, for us, it directs them either toward the Department of Health and Human Services or toward Hawk. And then the other directs them in regard to at least their rights under what would be the Center for Disease Control moratorium preventing evictions till the end of the year. So that is then read to them.
Okay.
Even before their case is initially heard. In addition to that, so that people understand really what's also happening in the virtual courtroom, and from my perspective, we are blessed to have this. For myself, I just did my docket yesterday. I have 6 legal services attorneys in my virtual courtroom. We will put them into a breakout room with tenants so that initial contact can occur right at that first hearing, and so that they can get the information and do that. We also have Housing Access for Washtenaw County available at that time, so that the preliminary information regarding the availability of funding or financial assistance can occur right at that point in time. It may require a follow-up appointment, but that's fine. We're actually getting them, we're getting the information. It's a much better system just in terms of backing up than even having them call, or even when they show up and, you know, if legal services or Hawk were not there, I would say, well, you need to contact them. Well, that's fine. They would leave my courtroom, but then life interferes and they don't get to them. Here, what is happening is we're getting to these individuals. The information is getting out there, and the number of people that, quite frankly, are being served is, from my standpoint, tremendous. So much so that the sort of the bad part of that comes out, and that is that it's a tax on the resources that were initially set, so that it is becoming difficult. Although they're working on it, it is becoming difficult for Hawk to keep up. And you know, they're having to, you know, initially started out, they could see somebody in the courtroom, have an appointment usually within a week. That has now expanded where they're not getting appointments, physical appointments, till much later in, for October. We were on October 1st or 2nd, which was yesterday, and they got appointments three weeks out, and they just don't have the slots. But they're expanding their capacity, and so hopefully we won't continue in that process. But you know, that's what the court process is doing, that I think people don't understand, and how, at least through that process, evictions are actually being prevented.
Okay.
From occurring. So.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Kathy.
So I had one question that's a little bit different, and maybe would go to Mayor Taylor or Teresa. So there are, you know, looking in the chat, there have been some concerns about retired folks on a fixed income, and how, you know, this might be challenging for them in terms of keeping their houses, the taxes going up. And I was wondering if you could talk about programs. Are there programs in Ann Arbor or through the county to help senior citizens, people on fixed incomes who are, you know, who the taxes are impacting? Is there anything there, or could there be?
I know this year the city of Ann Arbor has been even more aggressive with the poverty exemption marketing and information to tenants. So every local union of government they set their own standard on what kind of exemption, what level for the poverty exemption, to basically completely exempt property taxes for low income folks. And this sometimes does fall into the category for seniors on fixed income. So I've been really impressed that Ann Arbor has taken the initiative to mail more information out, to get it out more publicly. And I think there's some even talk about reconsidering what the threshold is for that. So it's a little different than assistance. It's actually an exemption. But you do have to apply each year. So it is something that we always need help getting the word out, because if you've done it, you might think, oh, I need to do it again. But if you maybe weren't in this situation last year, but maybe the pandemic puts you into it or something else, some other major life change, you may not know about it. So it's stuff we've always need help making sure people are aware that exists.
Yeah, if I recollect, I think that's also included in the tax bill itself. I think we have reference to the exemption right there. You raise an interest. You raise, of course, you know, it's you know, it's a classic tension. I mean, you know, with municipal finance as it is in Michigan, you know, the legislature has over the decades, you know, had a starve the beast mentality, and you know, municipalities are limited in their ability to raise money. You know, we would love to have a ticket tax for events in excess of 100,000 people, and that would, you know, in ordinary years and you know, in years future could raise a healthy amount of money for the benefit of the community. We are not authorized to do so. It'd be great if we were able to have a targeted sales tax of some kind for the city of Ann Arbor. It'd be great, but we're unable to do so. you know, we at the same time have needs that only government can address. And so, you know, the construction support of, you know, the neediest among us is, you know, right in the housing and services for them. That's right in the sweet spot of only government will do it. And, you know, we can't do it without resources. And the only way that we are able to get resources for the purpose is through millages. You know, and sale of land. You know, we strove to have you get $5 million for the Affordable Housing Fund by the sale of the library lot. That was defeated by Proposal A activists. There is some money that comes into affordable housing now because of the 40-40-20 use resolution. But that is, you know, obviously still fought every year, although I think the fight will be a little less contentious going forward. But even still, that's a limited amount of money. You know, the only way that we're going to be able to take the meaningful action that we absolutely need in this area is through increased taxes. And you know, I'm grateful for the reference to the poverty exemption. That's obviously something that we take very seriously. We know that affordability is an issue, but we also know that, you know, that we're the only ones that are going to be able to take action here, and the only way to do that is through additional resources.
All right.
One comment that I cannot resist making, since this is a political party, it matters who you elect to office.
Yes.
Elections matter. And
exactly.
We need all of us to elect people whose values reflect our, you know, caring about what happens to our neighbors.
Yeah.
Both on a local, community, state, and national level. Thank you.
What you said.
All right. So I can't believe that it's 12 o'clock already. We've been having so much fun. A lot of information and a lot of contributions. You guys, thank you so much for this.
Can I just say one thing really quick before? I see something on the comment page about legal services, and I'm not here to comment for legal services at all, but that they're turning away people who need representation. People need to understand that they're under certain federal restrictions, which may go to Kathy's point. It's important who you elect, and are looking at those policies. But legal services is not turning away anybody. I encourage anybody that needs help, if they can fit them within their criteria of who they can represent, they will represent them. And I know that Tish Lee, who is over there running it, won't. The number is 665-6181. Give them a call. They will assist any tenant that needs help. So I don't want that out there and couldn't let it sit there. People know I'll speak my mind, and I have to just say something about that. So I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, Judge Simpson. And thank you, Aubrey and Amanda and Teresa and Desirae. You too, Kathy and Mayor Taylor. You need to know that for the next election, I'm going to be running. So you can have some color on your panel. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure to moderate this with along with Kathy, and to hear all the great ideas and the fact that you guys are working all together to make this happen. And, you know, we're going to solve it soon. One of the things that I would suggest, and if you need any help, I'll be the first one in line, is go after University of Michigan. As a taxpayer, I'm not happy that they're not helping. Okay. Thank you again. We will have this recorded, and hopefully you guys will come again and watch and be a part of it. Just like Kathy said, let's go out and vote and get in a new administration so we can start making some things happen.
You bet.
All right, guys. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now. You.